Do you ever find yourself awake long after the world has gone quiet? When the streetlights glow like distant stars, and the soft hum of American midnight feels like it's calling your name? Do you ever wonder what stories are happening at this exact hour, in small forgotten towns, in cozy suburban homes, on lonely highways stretching across the country, or in quiet coastal places where waves whisper secrets to whoever is still awake to hear them? Tonight, you're about to step into one of those nighttime stories, a story that slowly unfolds, gently wraps around your thoughts, and carries you into the calmest place your mind has visited in a long time. Welcome to a night in the USA where dreams walk softly and sleep waits patiently for you to arrive. The night began like a slow breath over the quiet American town of Willow Creek, a place so small that most maps didn't bother to mark it, but a place so peaceful that anyone who ever passed through never really forgot it. It was late, one of those rare nights where the air felt cool enough to carry the scent of pine and old wooden porches, and warm enough that nobody hurried inside to escape the wind. The streets were empty except for the warm amber glow of street lamps, stretching long, soft shadows across the sidewalks. Some nights felt loud even in silence, but this night felt like the world was whispering, "Slow down, breathe, rest a while." At the very edge of Willow Creek stood an old family-run diner, Starling's Midnight Cafe, a place famous for its blueberry pie and the sound of its squeaky screen door. The cafe had been open for 47 years, and people said it had absorbed every story ever told inside its walls. If you listened closely while sitting at the counter late at night, you could almost hear memories drifting in the air, soft, warm, familiar. Inside, a single light glowed above the coffee machines. Soft golden hues painted the empty booths. The neon sign outside buzzed faintly, a lullaby for anyone driving down Highway 9 at this hour. And tonight, someone was. A dusty silver pickup truck rolled slowly down the road, its headlights tracing the curve of the street as though guiding someone home. The truck pulled into the diner's parking lot, engine humming softly before shutting off. The driver's door creaked open. A man stepped out, a quiet traveler named Elias Grant. He was in his mid-30s, tired from days of driving alone, but with a softness in his eyes that suggested he wasn't running from something, just searching for something he couldn't quite name. He paused for a moment, breathing in the cool night air, feeling the stillness settle across his chest like a warm blanket. The cafe looked empty, but the open sign glowed gently, as though just waiting for him. Elias pushed the door, and the old hinges sang their familiar sleepy tune. Inside, the diner looked frozen in time. Red leather booths, checkered floors, and the faint smell of fresh pie still lingering in the air. Behind the counter stood June Harper, the cafe's night shift guardian, a woman in her late 50s with silver-streaked hair and eyes that held entire constellations of stories. She smiled, a slow, warm, easy smile that felt like a soft pillow on a winter night. "Long drive?" she asked, her voice gentle enough to calm storms. "Long week," Elias answered, sliding into a booth near the window. June poured him a cup of coffee, though she already knew, just from looking at him, that he didn't really need caffeine. He needed the kind of comfort that came from being in a place that expected nothing from him. The chair across from him creaked softly as she sat down. People only come through Willow Creek when something's weighing on them, or when something's waiting for them. Elias stared at the steam rising from his cup, the swirl of heat curling slowly into the air. It looked like a small, quiet galaxy, spinning just above his fingertips. "I don't know what I'm looking for," he admitted. "I just kept driving until it felt like the world finally stopped yelling." June nodded thoughtfully. "The world is loud," she whispered, "but there are still places that remember how to hush it." Outside the window, the night deepened. Stars glowed like tiny lanterns scattered across the sky. A soft breeze nudged the diner's wind chimes, letting out a single, delicate note. Elias leaned back in the booth, feeling his shoulders loosen for the first time in days. "Does it always feel peaceful like this?" he asked. June smiled. "This town sleeps near the river," she said softly, "and rivers know how to carry things away." Across the street, the American flag in front of the town hall fluttered gently, not with urgency, but with a slow, dreamy rhythm that matched the heartbeat of the night. Somewhere far away, a train whistle echoed, long, low, comforting, a sound that scraped off the last bits of restlessness inside Elias's chest. He hadn't heard a train whistle since he was a kid. Back then, it had always felt like a lullaby. June placed a slice of blueberry pie in front of him. "On the house," she said softly. "Everyone who looks tired gets one." He took a bite, and it tasted like something from a childhood memory he didn't even realize he'd been missing. Warm, sweet, safe. For a moment, the world felt small and gentle. "Do a lot of travelers stop here?" he asked. "Only the ones who need to," June replied. "People don't end up in Willow Creek by accident. This town calls to you when you're ready to rest." Elias stared out the window again, watching as a lone firefly drifted lazily past the glass, its tiny light blinking in slow waves. He found himself breathing deeper, slower. The tightness in his chest softened. "You know," June continued, "most folks don't realize how tired they are until they find a place that lets them be tired." Elias's eyes closed for a moment. He let the quiet fill him. "Maybe I've been tired for a long time," he said. June didn't reply. She didn't need to. Some truths hung gently in the air and didn't require words. Outside, the wind threw even softer, as though the whole night wanted to cradle whoever was awake. The town's old clock tower struck midnight, its chime slow, steady, deep, the kind of sound that made eyelids heavy. Elias finished the last bite of pie, setting the fork down carefully, as though afraid to break the peaceful spell around him. June stood up and placed the coffee pot back on the burner. "Stay as long as you need," she said softly. "Some nights, rest finds you before sleep does." Elias nodded, leaning back in the booth, gazing at the stars outside. He didn't know how long he sat there, minutes or maybe hours. Time felt different here, slow, gentle, unrushed. Willow Creek felt like a place that existed between waking and dreaming, a doorway where weary souls paused before stepping into sleep. And tonight, Elias Grant had found that doorway, or maybe it had found him.
The night in Willow Creek drifted forward at an unhurried pace, as though time itself had curled up beneath a blanket and decided to rest. Inside Starling's Midnight Cafe, Elias sat quietly, watching the faint shimmer of starlight reflecting on the glass windows. The stillness was thick enough to touch. He let out a slow breath, feeling it carry away pieces of the weight he'd been holding on to. But something else, something gentle, began to stir near the edge of his thoughts. A soft tug, a quiet pull from somewhere outside, as if the night wanted to show him something. He stood up from the booth, sliding his hands into his jacket pockets and glancing toward June, who was wiping down the counter with the same calm, careful rhythm she had used for decades. "I think I might take a walk," Elias said softly. June didn't look up, but a knowing smile spread across her face. "The river's waiting," she replied. "It always is." Elias hesitated. "How do you know I'm going there?" "Because everyone who stops here eventually goes to the river," she said. "That's where the quiet gets deep enough to hear yourself think." Her words settled inside him with the ease of truth. He nodded and stepped outside. The door creaked once more, its sleepy sound echoing into the night. The cool air wrapped around him as he walked onto the empty street. The road stretched softly toward the darker edge of the town, where street lamps grew fewer and stars grew brighter. Elias followed the narrow sidewalk leading west, toward the whispering trees and the faint sound of flowing water. Every step felt slower, not heavy, just careful, as though the night had its own rhythm and he didn't want to disturb it. Leaves rustled gently. Crickets hummed their midnight song. From far away, a dog barked once, a lonely sound that quickly faded into the vast quiet. The smell of pine deepened as he walked, earthy, cool, clean. Then he saw it, a soft shimmer ahead, like moonlight drifting across a sheet of glass. The Willow Creek River, wide, calm, patient, flowing through the town like a living lullaby. The water glowed silver under the moon, moving with a slow, soothing grace that made the entire world feel softer. Elias stepped closer until the toes of his boots were only a few inches from the riverbank. The ground sloped gently downward, covered in smooth stones warmed by sunlight earlier in the day. He sat down, resting his elbows on his knees. The river's sound was barely a whisper, a gentle swirl, a soft hush, like someone exhaling after a long day. The more he listened, the quieter his inner world became. No deadlines, no miles of road, no unfinished conversations, no past mistakes trying to tether themselves to his mind. Just water, moving forward at its own steady pace. He let the rhythm seep into him, loosening the knots inside his chest, one at a time. For the first time in a long while, Elias allowed himself to simply be. Not a traveler, not a fixer, not a man on the move, just a person existing beside a river under a sleepy American sky. As he sat there, something caught his eye. Across the water, a cluster of fireflies rose from the tall grass, tiny lights drifting upward like floating stars. Their gentle glow winked in soft pulses, dancing slowly inside the night air. Elias watched, entranced. The way they moved felt magical, but not in an overwhelming way, more like the world was offering a small, quiet wonder to whoever was patient enough to notice. He felt a memory nudge at him, a night when he was a child, sitting by a creek near his grandparents' farm in Iowa, catching fireflies with cupped hands and letting them go again. He could almost hear his grandfather's voice, low, rugged, warm. Fireflies only glow in places that feel safe. The memory washed through him like a wave of warm water, not painful, just familiar, a piece of himself he hadn't visited in years. Elias leaned back on his palms, eyes half closed, letting the cool night air brush his cheeks. The river whispered again, a soft sound, steady and soothing. He wondered how many people had sat here over the decades. Maybe that's why this town felt different. Maybe Willow Creek wasn't just peaceful. Maybe it was healing. Elias watched the moon ripple across the water's surface, each reflection stretching and bending as the river moved gently along its path. He thought about June's words. Rivers know how to carry things away. Maybe the water wasn't just flowing forward. Maybe it was carrying away pieces of old thoughts, old burdens, old weariness. Maybe that's why the air felt lighter here. Maybe that's why his chest felt fuller and emptier in all the right ways. After a while, Elias lay back on the smooth stones, hands tucked behind his head, eyes gazing at the night sky. Above him, the stars looked impossibly bright, thousands of tiny lanterns guiding tired souls towards rest. He could see the faint arc of the Milky Way stretching across the blue dark like a quiet highway made of light. He imagined cars traveling along it, not fast, not urgent, but drifting slowly towards some celestial resting place. The thought made him smile. He closed his eyes briefly, just long enough for a wave of calm to sweep through him. He wasn't asleep, but he wasn't fully awake either. He hovered in the soft, fragile space between, a space almost everyone chased but rarely caught. The air carried the faint scent of river moss, damp earth, and distant cedar wood, a combination that felt strangely comforting, as though the world itself were tucking him in. He breathed deeply, and the sound of the river shifted, growing even softer, like it was lowering its voice just for him. Minutes passed, or maybe an hour. Time worked differently here. When he opened his eyes again, the sky felt even deeper, the stars even closer, and something else had changed too. He wasn't alone by the river anymore. A few yards away, sitting on a smooth patch of stone, was an elderly man wearing a faded denim jacket and a baseball cap that had clearly seen many summers. He sat with his legs crossed, hands resting quietly on his knees, eyes fixed on the river as if it were an old friend telling a familiar story. Elias didn't speak. He didn't feel the need to. The man didn't look at him, but after a moment, he said softly, as though continuing a conversation that had begun years ago, "This river remembers everything." Elias turned his head slightly. "The river remembers?" The man nodded slowly. "It carries stories," he said. "Not in words, but in the way water moves. People come here with heavy hearts, and they leave a little lighter. The river keeps those pieces for them." His words were deep and calm, like the sound of wind through old trees. Elias sat up, resting his arms on his knees. "Do you come here often?" "Every night," the man replied. "Been doing it for 34 years. My wife used to sit here with me. After she passed," he paused, breath catching just slightly, "the river kept the quiet for me." Elias felt a soft ache in his chest, not sharp, not painful, just human. "I'm sorry," he whispered. The man shrugged gently, but with kindness. "We loved deeply. That kind of love doesn't disappear. It just changes where it rests." He tapped his hand lightly on the stone beneath him. "And sometimes this place helps you remember what you didn't know you'd forgotten." Elias looked up at the sky again, and he understood. He wasn't just resting. He was remembering how to rest. The man stood slowly, stretching his joints, then began walking back toward the path. Before leaving, he looked over his shoulder. "Take your time. The river's patient." And then he was gone, slipping into the night with the same quiet ease as the fireflies. Elias stayed by the river for a while longer, listening, breathing, letting the night wash gently over him like a soft blanket pulled up to his chin.
Elias remained near the riverbank long after the old man's footsteps had faded into the gentle quiet of the night. The world around him felt softer now, as if the river, the stars, and the cool midnight air were all working together to cradle his thoughts and lull them into stillness. Slow ripples passed through the water, reflecting streaks of moonlight that stretched like silver threads woven gently across the surface. Elias closed his eyes again, letting the steady rhythm of the river sink deeper into him, filling every corner of his mind with calm. After some time, he slowly stood and dusted the small stones from the back of his jeans. His legs felt lighter, so much lighter than when he first arrived in town, as though the ground itself had lifted part of his weight for him. He looked back at the winding path leading toward Willow Creek's main street. The town was small, but tonight it felt endless, as though every quiet corner held a story waiting to be found. He began walking, letting the sleepy breeze guide him. The closer he got to the town center, the more he noticed the lights. Small houses with warm windows glowing softly, like lanterns keeping watch while their owners slept. Porch lights flickered in gentle amber hues, and above them wind chimes swayed with the faintest touch of the midnight air. Each home seemed to hum with a comfortable hush, a silence so safe that even Shahouse felt at peace. Willow Creek wasn't the kind of place that made noise. It was the kind of place that embraced you, with quiet. Elias walked slowly along the sidewalk, passing mailboxes with hand-painted numbers, wooden fences weathered by years of rain and sun, and tall oak trees that stretched their branches over the street like they were offering shade even at night. At the edge of Main Street, he noticed a bench beneath an old street lamp. The light flickered gently, not in a tired way, but like it was breathing. He sat down, letting the wood creak softly beneath him. Above, the sky shimmered with constellations he hadn't seen this clearly in ages. Back home, wherever home currently was for him, the sky was often swallowed by city glow. But here, in Willow Creek, the stars felt close enough to touch. For a moment, he wondered how many people in this town paused to look at the sky each night. How many children pressed their faces to bedroom windows just to count the stars. How many families shared quiet moments on porches, watching meteors pass like silent wishes. A gentle rustle beside him broke his thoughts. A small cat, gray fur, bright eyes, emerged from behind the street lamp pole, stretching lazily before hopping onto the bench beside him. Elias blinked in surprise, then smiled. "Hey there," he whispered. The cat blinked back, slow and calm, as if greeting him was the most natural thing in the world. It curled its tail neatly around its paws and sat close enough that Elias could feel its warmth. "Do you live around here?" he asked softly. The cat purred, a slow, steady vibration that blended perfectly with the quiet hum of the night. Elias reached out and gently scratched behind its ears. The cat leaned into the touch, closing its eyes in contentment. There was something soothing about sharing silence with a creature that was naturally part of the night. Animals rarely questioned why someone was out late or whether they had some place to be. They simply existed beside you, reminding you that you were not alone. After a moment, the cat stood and hopped down from the bench, pausing to glance back at Elias. It meowed once, as if telling him to follow. And so he did. The cat walked gracefully ahead, its small paws tapping almost silently on the pavement. It moved like it knew every inch of the town, every hidden path, every secret corner. Elias followed it toward a narrow side street lined with flickering porch lights and small front yards filled with night-blooming flowers. He didn't recognize the scents, some sweet, some earthy, some faint and unfamiliar, but all of them blended beautifully into the warm summer air. The cat continued leading him until they reached a tiny park tucked between two houses, a place he might never have found on his own. It wasn't large, just a couple of benches, a wooden swing set, and a small garden that looked like it had been tended with love for decades. The cat trotted toward the center of the park and sat down next to a circular stone mosaic embedded in the ground. The mosaic was made of small colored tiles, deep blues, gentle greens, soft browns, arranged in swirling patterns that resembled a quiet breeze frozen in time. Elias stepped closer, curious. The mosaic formed the shape of a winding river, its curves spiraling out from a central stone. Around the edges, small inscribed tiles formed a border. He crouched down to read one. "May those who wander find rest." He swallowed softly. The next tile read, "May those who carry burdens set them down." Another, "May quiet nights heal tired hearts." The words weren't dramatic. They weren't meant to impress. They simply existed with quiet kindness, the kindness that seeped into the soul and stayed there. Elias traced a fingertip gently over the tiles, feeling their cool, smooth surfaces. He wondered who had created this, who had taken the time to lay each piece, who had chosen words that felt like soft hands resting gently on the shoulders of strangers. The cat curled up beside the mosaic, closing its eyes. The soft purr returned, steady, peaceful, like a tiny engine of calm. Elias sat down cross-legged beside it, leaning slightly backward to rest his palms on the cool grass. The air smelled faintly of lavender, a scent that made his thoughts slow even more. The park felt protected, as though it existed slightly outside time. Nothing rushed here, nothing demanded anything. It was a space that simply let people be. Quiet, tired, hopeful, healing. He let out a slow breath, the kind that releases tension you didn't realize you were holding. The cat opened one eye as if to check on him, then closed it again with a soft sigh. Across the street, a porch light flickered, revealing the silhouette of an elderly woman watering her flower pots even at this late hour. Her movements were slow but careful, each pour from the watering can deliberate, as though she understood how much her flowers rely on this gentle attention. Elias watched the scene quietly. There was something beautiful about noticing simple moments at night, moments that hummed without an audience, without a rush, without a noise. He laid back, lying down on the grass, hands resting on his stomach. The sky above the park seemed even more open here. The stars stretched wider, brighter, as if the park existed in a pocket where the universe pressed itself closer to Earth. His breathing slowed, the edges of his thoughts softened, the gentle hum of nighttime settled around him like a warm blanket. And for the first time in a very long while, Elias felt completely, utterly present. He didn't think about tomorrow, didn't think about where he needed to be next, didn't think about unfinished chapters of his life. He just existed, quietly, under a sky that felt infinite and comforting. Minutes slipped into one another, smooth as river stones. When Elias eventually sat up, the cat had wandered off again, back into the shadows of the night. But not before leaving him, exactly where he needed to be. Elias stood slowly, stretching his arms overhead, a soft crack slipping from his jeans. He looked once more at the mosaic under the park's dim light. Then he whispered the words aloud, his voice barely above a breath. "May those who wander find rest." He felt something shift inside him. Something small, but steady. He turned toward the street and began walking again, heading deeper into Willow Creek's calming midnight embrace. The town wasn't done with him yet, and he wasn't done with it. Not tonight.
Elias continued walking along the quiet neighborhood street, guided only by instinct and the soft flutter of a warm breeze drifting lazily across the town. His footsteps felt softer now, more grounded, as though the earth beneath him had grown kinder with every moment he spent in Willow Creek. The night wasn't cold, just cool enough to wake the senses without disturbing the calm. Crickets played their steady nocturnal hum, and somewhere far off, a screen door squeaked before closing with a gentle wooden thud. He followed the sidewalk toward the older part of town, where the houses sat farther apart and the wide oak trees cast long, sleepy shadows across the pavement. As he turned a corner, he noticed a warm light glowing from inside a small brick building at the edge of the street. A sign swung gently above the door, lit by a single lamppost beside it. Willow Creek Public Library, established 1912. What surprised him wasn't the building itself. It looked like any small-town library, complete with ivy vines climbing the outer wall and wide stone steps leading to the entrance. What surprised him was that the lights were still on at this hour. It was well past midnight, yet the windows glowed warmly as though the library refused to sleep. Curiosity nudged him forward. He walked up the steps, placing his hand on the old brass handle. It felt smooth and cool to the touch, the kind of handle polished naturally by decades of hands opening it to seek quiet. The door creaked open softly. Inside, the library felt like stepping into a different kind of night, a warmer one, a deeper one. The air smelled faintly of old books, vanilla notes from aging pages, and a hint of cedar from the wooden shelves. Rows of books stretched quietly across the room, standing tall like gentle guardians watching over stories waiting to be read. The lights were dim, not bright enough to wake the mind, but soft enough to soothe it, a warm amber glow that seemed designed to invite rest rather than focus. At the far end of the room, behind a wooden desk, sat a woman with silver hair pulled into a low bun. She wore a knitted sweater and tiny half-moon glasses perched on the tip of her nose. She looked up slowly as Elias stepped inside, a calm smile forming on her face, as though she had been expecting him all along. "Good evening," she said softly, her voice warm enough to melt into the stillness of the library. Elias nodded, keeping his voice equally gentle. "Good evening. I didn't expect you to be open." "We're not officially, but the library stays awake for wanderers." Her words settled into the quiet as naturally as dust settling on an old hardcover. Elias stepped closer, curiosity lifting the corners of his tired thoughts. "What do you mean?" he asked. She closed the book she had been reading, placing a small ribbon between the pages. "Some nights," she said, "people don't need answers. They just need a place where silence is soft and stories breathe quietly around them." Elias took a slow breath, letting her words wash gently over the tension inside him. His gaze drifted up the shelves, rows of books that had lived longer than he had, books that carried memories, wisdom, comfort, and pieces of countless lives. "This place feels different," he said quietly. The librarian nodded. "It's the only building in town that doesn't fully sleep. Even when the lights are off, the stories stay awake. They whisper to each other at night, and sometimes to the people who need to hear them." Something inside Elias relaxed, something he hadn't realized was clenched. The librarian gestured toward a cozy corner where two deep armchairs sat beside a low wooden table. A soft lamp glowed between them. "Sit," she said gently. "Stay as long as you like." Elias nodded gratefully and walked toward the armchairs. The seat cushions were soft and old, bearing the shape of decades of readers who had melted into them during quiet hours. He sat, feeling the chair envelop him like an old friend offering a warm embrace. On the table beside him lay a stack of books, no titles facing outward, just a tower of worn spines waiting patiently for someone to choose them. One book in particular caught his eye. It wasn't dusty or worn like the others. Its cover shimmered slightly under the lamp's glow, a deep navy blue with faint silver flecks that resembled stars scattered across a night sky. He reached for it instinctively, his fingers brushing the cool, smooth surface. The librarian's voice drifted from behind him, soft and knowing. "That one chooses its readers." Elias turned slightly. "What's it about?" The woman smiled, a small curve of lips filled with gentle mystery. "Rest," she said simply, "and everything a tired heart forgets it needs." He opened the book. The pages were thick, soft to the touch, and filled not with dense paragraphs, but with short passages, small reflections, quiet poems, and blank spaces meant to breathe. He read the first passage. "You are allowed to slow down. The world will wait." He closed his eyes for a moment. The words felt like warm hands pressing lightly on his shoulders, releasing something tight inside him. He flipped to another page. "Some nights are not fought. Some nights are simply held." He exhaled gently, letting his body sink deeper into the chair. Another page. "There is a kind of healing that only silence can give. Let it." A subtle warmth spread through his chest, calm, steady, almost weightless. The librarian stepped quietly to his side, placing a small navy blue bookmark across the desk. Its surface shimmered like the book's cover. For when you forget to rest, it will remind you. Elias took the bookmark gently, holding it between his fingers like a fragile gift. He glanced around the quiet library once more. The books, the warm light, the stillness that seemed woven into the walls themselves. Then he stepped out into the night. The door closed behind him with the softest click, as though sealing a secret within. Outside, the air felt cooler, but lighter. The stars seemed brighter, the breeze gentler, the world softer. Elias tucked the shimmering bookmark into his jacket pocket and continued walking down the quiet street. Willow Creek still had more to show him, more quiet corners, more hidden pockets of peace waiting patiently in the dark, and he was finally ready to find them.
The street grew quieter as Elias wandered farther from the center of town. The library's warm glow faded behind him, replaced by the soft rhythm of footsteps and the gentle breath of night air moving through the trees. Willow Creek felt different now, less like a place he was visiting and more like a place that was slowly welcoming him in. Porch lights dotted the road ahead, each one glowing like a promise. Not too bright, not too dim, just enough to say, "You're safe here." Elias walked at an unhurried pace, letting his senses lead him. The scent of fresh-cut grass lingered faintly in the air, mixed with the warm smell of wood and late summer flowers. Somewhere nearby, a radio played quietly through an open window, a slow country song humming softly before dissolving back into silence. He passed a small white house with rocking chairs lined neatly on the porch, their shadows swaying gently as if they were rocking themselves to sleep. Farther down the street, one porch light remained brighter than the others. It didn't flicker. It didn't hum. It simply glowed steadily, as though it had been left on intentionally, waiting. Elias felt drawn to it without knowing why. He stepped onto the sidewalk leading up to the house. The yard was small but well kept, lined with flower beds and smooth stones placed carefully along the edges. The porch boards creaked softly beneath his boots. A wind chime hung near the door, its sound low and mellow, like the slow turning of a clock. Before he could knock, the door opened gently. An elderly woman stood there, wrapped in a soft cardigan, her silver hair pulled back loosely. Her eyes were kind and clear, reflecting the porch light like warm pools of understanding. "Oh," she said softly, as if greeting an old friend. "There you are." Elias blinked in surprise. "I'm sorry," he began. "I didn't mean to—" She smiled before he could finish. "It's all right," she said. "People find this porch when they need a place to sit for a while." She stepped aside, gesturing toward the rocking chairs. "Come, the night is too quiet to stand alone." Elias hesitated only a moment before stepping onto the porch. The woman closed the door behind them, leaving the porch light glowing softly overhead. She settled into one of the rocking chairs, its wood creaking gently as it moved. Elias chose the chair beside her, sinking into its worn curves. The chair rocked naturally, as though it already knew his rhythm. For a while, neither of them spoke. The street stretched quietly in front of them, empty and peaceful. Fireflies blinked lazily above the grass, and the moon rested low in the sky. "You know," the woman said eventually, her voice barely louder than the wind chimes, "no one who comes here does." Elias nodded, feeling the truth of her words settle inside him. She rocked slowly, the steady motion soothing in its simplicity. "My husband used to sit out here every night, said it helped him remember the good parts of the day and let go of the rest." Elias listened quietly, the sound of her voice blending with the soft creak of the chairs. "He passed a few years back," she said gently, "but the porch stayed, and so did the light." She glanced up at it, then back at Elias. Some lights aren't meant to turn off. They're meant to guide people home." The words settled deep. Elias stared out at the empty road, thinking of all the nights he'd spent driving, chasing distance instead of rest, thinking of all the lights he'd passed without realizing some of them were meant for him. The woman reached over and placed a knitted blanket across his lap. It was soft and warm, smelling faintly of lavender and clean cotton. "Just in case," she said kindly. Elias pulled the blanket closer, feeling his shoulders drop as warmth spread through him. The rocking chairs moved in gentle unison, back and forth, a slow rhythm that matched his breathing. The night felt still, but alive, like a deep breath being held carefully. "You know," the woman said softly, "rest doesn't always mean sleep." Elias turned slightly toward her. "Sometimes it means sitting somewhere where nothing is expected of you." He nodded. The quiet stretched comfortably between them. Crickets chirped, leaves rustled. The world felt patient. "I think," Elias said after a long pause, "I've been afraid to stop moving." She smiled knowingly. "Most people are, but even rivers slow down sometimes." Elias thought of the river again, its steady flow, its quiet strength. The porch light hummed softly overhead. Time slipped by unnoticed. At some point, Elias felt his eyelids grow heavy. Not heavy from exhaustion, but heavy from comfort. The woman noticed and smiled. "You can stay as long as you like," she said gently, "but the night still has a few places left to show you." Elias took a deep breath and slowly stood, folding the blanket neatly over the chair. "Thank you," he said sincerely. She nodded, her eyes kind and calm. "The porch light will be here whenever you need it." Elias stepped back onto the sidewalk, the porch light glowing steadily behind him. As he walked away, he felt something settle in his chest, a quiet understanding that some places in the world exist solely to remind us that we belong somewhere, even when we feel lost. Willow Creek continued to unfold around him, its sleepy streets guiding him forward. And somewhere ahead, the night waited patiently with one more gentle lesson still to come.
Elias walked on, leaving the glow of the porch light behind him as the road gently curved toward the outskirts of Willow Creek. The town slowly thinned, houses grew farther apart, streetlights appeared less frequently, and the night sky opened wider with every step. Ahead, the pavement narrowed into a long, quiet stretch of road that seemed to disappear into the dark. A small wooden sign stood near the edge of the road, its paint faded from years of sun and rain. "No outlet." Elias smiled faintly. He stepped onto the road anyway. The asphalt was smooth beneath his boots, still warm from the day's sun. Tall grass lined both sides, swaying gently like a sea of shadows moving with the breath of the night. There were no cars, no distant engines, no urgency, only the soft sound of wind moving through the open fields. This road felt different, not like a path meant to take you somewhere specific, but like one designed to let you walk without needing a destination. Elias slowed his pace even more, letting each step land deliberately. The farther he went, the quieter his thoughts became. It was the kind of quiet that didn't feel empty. It felt full, full of space, full of possibility, full of rest. Above him, the stars seemed endless, an entire universe stretching quietly overhead, indifferent to schedules, unconcerned with deadlines. Elias stopped walking and stood in the middle of the road, tilting his head back to take it all in. He hadn't stood still like this in years, not truly still, not without checking the time or planning the next move. The silence wrapped around him like a soft, invisible cloak. He closed his eyes. For a moment, he imagined the road extending forever, not forward, not backward, but inward. A road that led nowhere because it didn't need to lead anywhere. The idea made his chest loosen. Somewhere nearby, an owl called softly, a low, gentle sound that echoed once before fading back into the darkness. Elias opened his eyes again and noticed something ahead, a shape in the distance, dim but steady. As he walked closer, the shape became clearer. A single wooden bench stood at the side of the road, positioned to face the open fields and the vast sky beyond. It looked old, weathered by countless nights and seasons, but sturdy, as if it had been waiting. Elias approached slowly and sat down. The bench was cool, its surface smooth from years of use. He rested his hands on his thighs and stared out at the land stretching before him. The fields rolled gently, covered in tall grass that shimmered faintly under the moonlight. In the distance, a lone tree stood silhouetted against the stars, strong, patient, unmoving. Elias felt a deep sense of calm settle over him. He thought about how often people rushed past places like this, roads without destinations, benches without plaques, moments without meaning attached to them. And yet this was where he felt most at peace. He leaned back slightly, closing his eyes again. The air carried the faint scent of earth and wildflowers, a smell that reminded him of summer nights as a child, lying in tall grass, watching clouds drift slowly across the sky. Back then, time had felt infinite, and now, for this brief moment, it did again. A soft sound reached his ears, footsteps, slow, unhurried. Elias opened his eyes. A man approached along the road, hands tucked into his jacket, a wide-brimmed hat casting a shadow over his face. He stopped a few steps away and nodded politely. "Mind if I sit?" the man asked. Elias shook his head gently. "Not at all." The man sat beside him, the bench creaking softly beneath their combined weight. They sat in silence for a while, watching the fields sway. Finally, the man spoke. "Funny thing about roads like this," he said quietly. "They scare some people." Elias glanced at him. "Why is that?" "Because they don't promise anything," the man replied. "No signs telling you what you'll find. No guarantees." Elias nodded slowly. The man continued, "But some folks realize that's exactly what makes them peaceful." The words felt right. Elias looked back out at the fields, watching the grass ripple like water. "I think I've spent a long time chasing guarantees," he admitted softly. The man smiled beneath the shadow of his hat. "Most of us do, but guarantees don't always lead to rest." They sat quietly again. The night deepened around them, thick and gentle. "I come here when my mind won't settle," the man said after a while. "This road reminds me that it's okay not to know what comes next." The truth of that settled into him. The man stood slowly, stretching his back. "Take your time," he said. "The road won't mind." And with that, he continued walking, his figure gradually dissolving into the darkness. Elias remained on the bench, the weight of the night pressing softly around him. His breathing slowed further. The bench, the road, the sky, everything felt aligned. After a long while, Elias stood and took a last look at the open fields. He turned back toward Willow Creek, walking slowly, unhurried. The town lights glimmered faintly in the distance, not pulling him, not calling him, just waiting. He realized then that the road hadn't led nowhere at all. It had led him right where he needed to be, and the night wasn't finished yet.
Elias walked back toward Willow Creek as the night subtly shifted around him. The air felt slightly different now, cooler, fresher, as though the darkness itself was beginning to loosen its grip. The town lights shimmered softly ahead, not bright enough to wake the world, but steady enough to guide tired feet home. As he approached the familiar streets, he noticed a glow at the far end of Main Street, a warm, golden light spilling quietly onto the pavement. Starling's Midnight Cafe. The diner looked exactly as it had earlier, and yet not quite. The neon sign hummed more softly now, its colors gentler, as though even it was preparing to rest. Elias pushed open the door, and the familiar scent of coffee and warm pastry wrapped around him like a welcome. The cafe was still empty, save for one booth near the window and June behind the counter. She looked up and smiled knowingly. "Back already?" she asked softly. "Feels like I never really left," Elias replied. She poured him a cup of coffee without asking and set it in front of him. "Night has a way of circling people back to where they started," she said, "especially when they're ready to stay." Elias slid into the booth, the vinyl seat cool and familiar beneath him. Outside the window, the sky was beginning to shift, deep indigo fading slowly towards softer shades of blue. The night wasn't ending abruptly. It was easing out gently, like a slow exhale. Elias took a sip of coffee, the warmth spreading through him. "Did you find what you were looking for?" June asked. He thought for a moment. "I think I found what I stopped looking for," he said. June nodded approvingly. "That's usually how it works." She placed a plate of toast in front of him, but this time it wasn't blueberry pie. It was simple, golden, buttered, quiet. The kind of food that didn't demand attention, but offered comfort. Elias ate slowly, each bite grounding him further. The cafe clock ticked gently above the counter, its sound barely noticeable, but steady and reassuring. "You know," June said softly, "people think morning is about beginnings." Elias looked up. "But really," she continued, "morning is about endings done kindly." He let her words settle. The last of the night was stretching, softening, folding itself away with care. Outside, a delivery truck passed slowly down the street, its engine low and distant. Somewhere, a bird called once, tentative, as if testing the air. Elias leaned back in the booth, feeling his body sink deeper into comfort. "Most folks leave Willow Creek at sunrise," June said. "They think it's time." "And some don't?" Elias asked. She smiled. "Some realize they don't have to rush the next chapter." Elias stared out the window again, watching the sky grow lighter by degrees. He didn't feel the usual pull to move on. No pressure, no ticking urgency, just stillness. "Does the town mind if someone stays?" he asked. June shook her head. "The town doesn't mind anything," she said. "It simply exists." The coffee cup warmed his hands. The booth cradled him gently. The soft hum of the diner felt like a heartbeat, slow, steady, calming. Elias's eyelids grew heavier again. This time, he didn't fight it. He let his eyes close, just for a moment, trusting the cafe, the town, the quiet. He drifted, not fully asleep, but somewhere close enough that dreams brushed lightly against his thoughts. Images floated by, the river shimmering, the mosaic in the park, the open porch light, the endless road beneath the stars. All of it connected, woven together by a single thread of rest.
Starling watched him from behind the counter, a small, satisfied smile on her face. She turned the cafe sign from open to closed, the click barely audible. The night had done its work, and the morning, still soft, still kind, was waiting patiently.
The cafe remained quiet as Elias rested in the booth, the world beyond the windows slowly changing its color. The sky outside shifted from deep blue to a pale, muted gray. Not bright, not demanding, just enough to signal that the night was loosening its hold. The streetlights flickered once, then dimmed slightly, as though they too were getting ready to sleep. June moved gently behind the counter, her steps slow, careful not to disturb the calm that filled the room. Elias stirred slightly, not waking fully, just enough to adjust his posture, to rest his head more comfortably against the back of the booth. His breathing was deep now, even, unhurried. The kind of breathing that only comes when the mind feels safe enough to let go. Outside, the town of Willow Creek exhaled. Doors remained closed, porches were still, curtains fluttered faintly in open windows. The town wasn't waking yet. It was resting between moments, between night and morning, between yesterday and whatever came next. June poured herself a cup of coffee and stood by the window, watching the pale light creep across the pavement. She had seen this moment countless times, and yet it never grew old. There was something sacred about this hour, the hour when worries hadn't woken yet and expectations still slept. The cafe clock ticked softly, each second gentle, never sharp. A delivery truck passed by again, slower this time, its headlights dimmer. Somewhere nearby, a screen door opened and closed again. Life was beginning, but quietly. Elias shifted again, eyes fluttering briefly before settling closed once more. His thoughts drifted lazily, not forming clear images, just soft impressions. He felt the river again, cool and steady. He felt the porch light's warmth, the rocking chair's slow rhythm. He felt the smooth tiles of the mosaic beneath his fingertips, the library's warm glow, the open road beneath endless stars. Each memory floated through him gently, like leaves drifting on still water. Nothing clung, nothing demanded. The night had done its work well. Outside, a faint blush of color touched the horizon, soft pink, gentle gold. Birds began to stir in the trees, their calls quiet and tentative, as though asking permission to begin. June set her cup down and turned the lights slightly lower, letting the natural glow outside take over. She moved through the cafe, straightening chairs, wiping the counter once more, not because it needed it, but because the ritual itself was comforting. Some places carried calm because of how they were treated. Starling's Midnight Cafe was one of those places. Elias opened his eyes slowly. For a moment, he didn't remember where he was. Then the warmth returned, the smell of coffee, the quiet hum. He smiled faintly. "Morning?" he asked softly. June looked over. "Almost," she replied, "but not the loud kind." He nodded, sitting up a little straighter. "I slept," he said quietly. "You rested," June corrected gently. "There's a difference." Elias thought about that. "I think I forgot how," he admitted. June smiled. "That's okay. You remembered again." He looked out the window, watching the light stretch across the street. "I don't feel like leaving," he said. "You don't have to, even if you do." He chuckled softly, understanding what she meant. Rest wasn't a place, it was something you carried. June slid a small paper bag across the counter toward him. Inside, the faint smell of blueberry drifted upward. "For the road," she said, "whenever you choose to take it." Elias accepted it gratefully. Outside, the town continued to breathe. Windows glowed softly as lamps flicked on, kitchens warmed, coffee brewed.
But nothing rushed. Willow Creek never rushed. Elias stood and stretched slowly, feeling loose, steady, whole. He took one last look around the cafe, the booths, the counter, the gentle lights. "Thank you," he said. June nodded. "Come back any time. The night always remembers." He stepped outside. The air was cool and fresh, filled with the promise of a calm morning. The sky was brighter now, but still soft, like a whisper instead of a shout. Elias walked slowly down Main Street, hands in his pockets, heart light. He didn't know where he would go next, and for the first time that didn't bother him, because wherever he went, he would carry Willow Creek with him. The quiet, the stillness, the reminder that rest was always possible, even in the middle of a long road, even in the middle of a busy life, even now.
Elias walked beyond the edge of Main Street, past the last row of small shops and familiar houses, toward the place where the town gradually loosened its grip and the open world began again. The morning light had grown a little stronger now, but it was still gentle, a pale glow that rested softly on rooftops, on fences, on the tops of trees still heavy with sleep. The air felt clean, almost new. He moved without hurry, each step unforced, unplanned. The road stretched ahead, quiet and patient, waiting for nothing. Elias reached his truck, parked beneath a tall maple tree near the edge of town. The leaves rustled faintly above him, whispering together like old friends. He leaned against the door for a moment, looking back toward Willow Creek. From here, the town looked smaller, not diminished, just contained, like a secret held gently in the palm of his hand. Nothing dramatic marked his leaving, no signs, no farewells shouted across streets, just calm. He opened the truck door and sat inside, resting his hands on the steering wheel without turning the key. The interior smelled faintly of dust and travel, a reminder of all the miles he'd driven before finding this quiet place. Elias didn't rush to leave. Instead, he sat there, listening. The town's sounds were waking slowly now, a distant door closing, footsteps on a porch, a kettle beginning to whistle somewhere unseen. Life was resuming, but softly. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath. In, slow and steady. Out, even slower. He realized something then, something subtle but important. The calm he felt wasn't tied to the diner or the river or the porch light. It was inside him now. Willow Creek hadn't given him rest. It had reminded him how to allow it. He opened his eyes again and started the truck. The engine hummed low and steady, not impatient, not loud. Elias pulled onto the road and began driving at an easy pace. The town slipped behind him slowly, never rushing him out, never clinging. Fields opened up on either side of the road, rolling gently beneath the morning sky. The radio crackled faintly, then settled on a station playing soft instrumental music, piano notes drifting lazily through the cab. He turned the volume low and let it blend with the sound of tires on pavement. Mile by mile, the world widened, but the quiet stayed. Elias passed a sign marking the town's boundary, simple, unadorned. Willow Creek, drive gently. He smiled. He drove on. The road felt different now, not endless, not heavy, just open. Elias rested one hand on the steering wheel and let the other rest easily at his side. His thoughts drifted without pulling him anywhere. He
He wasn't replaying the past. He wasn't racing toward the future. He was simply here, moving through a morning that asked nothing of him yet. The sun rose higher, casting long, soft shadows across the fields. A flock of birds lifted suddenly from the grass, their wings beating slowly, unhurried. Elias watched them fade into the sky until they became part of it. He realized then that nights like the one he'd just experienced were rare, not because places like Willow Creek didn't exist, but because people often forgot how to notice them, forgot how to stop, forgot how to rest without guilt. The road curved gently ahead. Elias followed it. Every so often he glanced at the small paper bag on the passenger seat. The blueberry pastry rested inside, still warm enough to smell faintly sweet. He didn't eat it yet. Some things were better saved for when the moment felt just right. The sky had turned a soft, open blue now, clouds drifting lazily like half-remembered dreams. Elias felt calm settle deeper now, not sleepy, but peaceful, the kind of calm that stays with you long after you wake. He drove for a long while without checking the time. The world didn't seem to mind. Eventually, he pulled over near a wide stretch of open land, cut the engine, and stepped out. The breeze was light, cool against his face. He stood there for a moment, hands in his pockets, watching the grass move in slow waves. This was enough. He breathed in deeply, then let it go. Somewhere far behind him, Willow Creek continued its gentle rhythm, welcoming another tired traveler, another restless soul. And somewhere ahead, new roads waited patiently. Elias got back into the truck, started the engine once more, and drove on, carrying the quiet with him.
The road stretched quietly ahead, but Elias no longer watched it closely. He let the world pass by without gripping it. The truck moved steadily, tires humming softly against the pavement, a sound so gentle it felt like breathing. The morning had fully arrived now, but it was still tender, still kind. Sunlight filtered through drifting clouds, casting slow-moving patterns across the fields. The land felt open, uncluttered, patient. Elias felt a calm settle deeper inside him, not the fragile kind that disappears at the first noise, but the steady kind that stays. Eventually, he turned onto a narrow side road and slowed to a stop near a quiet overlook. He turned off the engine. Silence returned. He stepped out of the truck and walked a few paces forward, hands resting loosely at his sides. Before him, the land rolled gently into the distance, fields, trees, sky. Nothing dramatic, nothing demanding, just space. Elias sat down on the hood of the truck, letting his legs dangle. The warmth of the rising sun rested lightly on his skin. A breeze brushed past, cool and refreshing. He closed his eyes. This time, sleep didn't feel far away. It felt close, patient, like it had been walking beside him all along. His thoughts slowed again, softening into impressions instead of words. The river's whisper returned, faint and comforting. The porch light glowed somewhere in memory, steady, unchanging. The library's warm silence wrapped gently around him, pages turning without sound. The road beneath the stars stretched endlessly, but without urgency. Everything he had experienced in Willow Creek settled into him like a final exhale. He didn't need to understand it. He didn't need to hold on to it. It was enough to let it be.
Elias breathed in slowly, then out. And in that gentle space between breaths, sleep found him. Not suddenly, not heavily, but softly, naturally, like a blanket pulled up carefully, one corner at a time. The world continued without him for a while. The breeze moved, the sun climbed, the road waited, and Elias rested. Somewhere, a town like Willow Creek exists for everyone, a place of quiet moments, soft nights, and gentle reminders that rest is allowed. You don't have to search for it. You don't have to earn it. Sometimes you only have to slow down long enough for it to find you. And as this story comes to a close, there's nothing left for you to do. Nowhere you need to go. Just allow your breathing to settle, your thoughts to soften, your body to grow heavy and calm. Let this moment be enough. If this story helped you feel calmer, if your breathing slowed, or your thoughts grew quieter, you're always welcome to return. More gentle stories like this are waiting for you, whenever the night feels long or rest feels far away. You may choose to stay here, to let sleep take you now. Or, if you wish, you can quietly support this space by liking the video, subscribing for more peaceful nights, and returning whenever you need rest. For now, nothing else matters. Just rest. Sleep is already on its way.